Hey guys, welcome back to this channel, The Voice of the Past. In this video, we will unfold the untold story of the Sterling family's missing fortune, a mystery of gold and greed. Before continuing, if you are new into this channel, please consider subscribing to this channel. Let's start. In the small windswept town of Whistleridge, the grand estate of the Sterling family stood as a beacon of the town's historic wealth and mysteries. For generations, the Sterlings had been the custodians of a vast fortune, much of which was rumored to be in gold, hidden somewhere within the sprawling mansion's ancient walls. The last of the Sterlings, an elderly gentleman named Howard Sterling, had passed away under strange circumstances, leaving no heirs, or so it was thought. His death had triggered much speculation and an influx of distant relatives, treasure hunters, and curious locals, all drawn by the legend of the hidden gold. Howard's closest living relative, a niece named Eleanor Sterling, arrived in Whistleridge from her home in the bustling city, intent not just on attending the funeral, but on uncovering the truth behind her uncle's death and the missing fortune. Eleanor, a young historian with a penchant for puzzles, believed that the secret to the Sterling fortune lay in deciphering Howard's eccentricities and the cryptic clues he had left behind. The mansion itself was a labyrinth of books, artifacts, and odd memorabilia collected over centuries. As the last leaves of autumn fell, Eleanor began her search through the dusty halls and secret chambers, guided by a tattered journal she found in Howard's study. The journal was filled with riddles and strange diagrams that hinted at the locations within the mansion where the gold could be hidden. Her quest was not solitary for long. News of Howard's death and his unclaimed wealth had spread, and Whistleridge saw new faces with each passing day. Among them was a suave historian, Dr. James Cartwell, who claimed to be researching the Sterling family's contributions to local history. His keen interest in the mansion's architecture and his unusual knowledge of the Sterling family lore both intrigued and alarmed Eleanor. As the cold embrace of winter began to settle over Whistleridge, the mystery only deepened. Lights flickered in abandoned parts of the mansion, footprints appeared in the snow leading nowhere, and whispers echoed through the halls, speaking of betrayal and a curse that had plagued the Sterling family for generations. Amidst this eerie atmosphere, Eleanor discovered her first significant clue, a hidden passage behind the library, marked on a map as the way to the Midas touch. The map was intricate, a masterpiece of cryptic annotations and faded ink, leading to parts of the mansion that even the family had forgotten. The passage revealed by the map was narrow and lined with old, creaky bookshelves that seemed to whisper secrets of their own. Eleanor, with a lamp in one hand and the map in the other, navigated through this cramped space, her heart racing as shadows danced along the walls. At the end of the passage, she discovered a room untouched by time, filled with antique furniture covered in sheets and paintings that stared back at her from the past. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and mystery. It was here, in this forgotten room, that Eleanor found a safe embedded in the wall behind one of the paintings. The safe was old and rusted, but it was the kind that required a key that, according to the map, was hidden within the mansion, tied to the Sterling family's history and their darkest secrets. As Eleanor stood before the concealed doorway, she felt the weight of history pushing her forward, and with a deep breath, she stepped into the shadows, unaware of the eyes watching her every move. The challenge was set, and the race to uncover the Sterling family's lost fortune was truly on. The question remained, however, who else was searching for the Sterling gold, and what lengths were they willing to go to claim it as their own? As Eleanor delved deeper into the Sterling mansion, her initial excitement turned to apprehension. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every creak and whisper in the vast old house seemed to carry a warning. Her only guide through the labyrinthine corridors and hidden rooms was the tattered map, its edges worn, as if many hands had folded it over the centuries. The map led her next to a grand ballroom, its once lavish decorations now faded and covered in dust. The chandeliers hung low, their crystals dim and lifeless, yet they still held a ghostly elegance. According to the map, a clue to the next key's location was hidden within one of the ornate panels of the ballroom's wooden floor. As she searched, the sound of footsteps echoed through the halls. Startled, Eleanor hid behind a heavy drapery. Peeking out, she saw Dr. James Cartwell wandering with a curious eye over the paintings and sculptures that lined the ballroom. His presence confirmed her suspicions that she wasn't alone in her quest. She waited for him to leave before continuing her search. Under the pale moonlight streaming through the cracked windows, Eleanor finally found the loose floor panel. Inside, there was a small, intricately carved box. It contained a miniature portrait of a woman who resembled Eleanor, likely an ancestor, and beneath the portrait, a brass key with cryptic symbols engraved on its surface. Eleanor's hands trembled as she realized she was holding a piece of history that could lead her to the Sterling fortune. With the new key secured, Eleanor returned to the library where she had found the map. This room, filled with ancient books and the scent of leather, felt like the heart of the mansion's mystery. She pored over the journals and letters of her ancestors, discovering tales of greed, betrayal, and loss that painted a tragic history of the Sterling family. In the dim light, she noticed a book that seemed out of place. As she pulled it from the shelf, the bookcase shuddered and slowly swung open, revealing another secret passage. This new path was colder and led down into the dark depths of the mansion's foundation. With only her lamp to guide her, Eleanor descended. The air grew chillier as she moved deeper underground. The passage opened into a vast cellar filled with barrels and crates that bore shipping labels from all over the world, evidence of the Sterling's extensive trade networks in the past. At the far end of the cellar, she found another safe, this one larger and more foreboding than the last. Eleanor took the brass key, holding her breath as she inserted it into the lock. To her relief and amazement, it turned with a heavy click. The safe's door creaked open, revealing several bags heavy with gold coins, glinting in the lamp's flickering light. However, the joy of her discovery was short-lived. As she examined the gold, she heard a noise behind her. Turning swiftly, she found herself face to face with Dr. Cartwell, who had followed her into the cellar. "Quite the find, Miss Sterling," he said, his voice echoing ominously in the confined space. His eyes were fixed not on her, but on the gold. Eleanor stepped back, clutching the lamp. "What do you want, Doctor Cartwell?" "Only what's due to any historian, to uncover the truth, and perhaps a share of the fortune," he replied, stepping closer. Eleanor knew she had to be cautious. Dr. Cartwell was no mere academic. His interests were as shadowed as the cellar they stood in. She needed to keep him talking and find a way out of this situation, all while protecting the Sterling legacy she was only just beginning to uncover. Eleanor's mind raced as she faced Dr. Cartwell in the chilly cellar. With the bags of gold revealed, the stakes were higher, and she understood that her solitary search had unwittingly turned into a dangerous game. She kept a wary distance, her grip tightening on the lamp. "I assume you're not going to let me leave here with all this, are you?" she asked, trying to gauge his intentions. Dr. Cartwell smiled thinly, his gaze flickering between Eleanor and the open safe. "I believe we could arrange a partnership, Miss Sterling. After all, two heads are better than one, and who knows what dangers or traps your ancestors might have left to protect their wealth." Eleanor was skeptical. Trusting Cartwell could be a monumental mistake, but she also knew she needed help, especially if there were more clues and possibly more gold hidden within the mansion. "And what if I refuse?" she ventured cautiously. "Then I suppose I'll have to follow you closely, won't I? Either way, I'm involved now," he replied smoothly. Eleanor pondered her options. Forming a temporary alliance might give her the advantage of keeping Cartwell where she could see him and possibly learn more about his own research and motives. With a nod, she agreed to his proposal, but with one condition. Everything they found from then on would be documented and evaluated together. "Agreed," Cartwell said, extending his hand to seal their uneasy partnership. With their alliance formed, they returned to the library where Eleanor showed Cartwell the map and the clues she had pieced together. Together, they pored over Howard's journal and other ancient texts late into the night, deciphering coded messages that alluded to the history of the Sterling family's dealings, their hidden wealth, and the potential locations of other caches. During their research, Eleanor learned that the Sterling fortune was not just amassed through legitimate trade, but also through more dubious means, including smuggling and privateering during the 18th century. This revelation added layers of complexity to her family's legacy, making her quest not only a hunt for treasure, but also a journey toward understanding the true nature of her ancestors. The next day, fortified by their new understanding, Eleanor and Cartwell explored one of the other locations marked on the map, a secluded garden pavilion that had fallen into disrepair. As they cleared away overgrowth and debris, they uncovered a stone slab with a Sterling family crest. Beneath the slab, another compartment revealed several old leather-bound ledgers and documents. These documents proved to be ship logs and transaction records, some of which contained hidden compartments filled with small precious items, gemstones, old coins, and other artifacts. Each piece seemed to be a part of a larger puzzle, hinting at the widespread and far-reaching influence of the Sterlings. As they cataloged their findings, Eleanor felt a strange sensation, as if the eyes of her ancestors were upon her, watching her every move through the legacy they left behind. The garden around them was silent save for the rustling of leaves, yet she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was then that the whispers started, a soft murmuring at first, as if carried by the wind. Words began to form from the whispers, speaking in an old dialect. They spoke of a guardian, a protector of the Sterling fortune, whose spirit lingered, ensuring that the treasure would only fall into worthy hands. Eleanor looked at Cartwell, noticing his uneasy glance towards the darkening edges of the garden. It was clear he heard them too. Their alliance, initially formed out of necessity, now seemed bound by the deeper, more spectral elements of the Sterling mystery. They needed to stick together, not just out of greed or academic interest, but possibly for their own safety. As the sun set over Whistleridge, casting long shadows across the garden, Eleanor and Cartwell packed away their findings. Tomorrow, they would delve deeper into the mysteries of the Sterling estate, prepared, or so they hoped, to face whatever or whoever guarded the family's secrets. The morning mist hung heavily over Whistleridge as Eleanor and Dr. Cartwell ventured deeper into the Sterling estate, armed with new clues and a wary alliance. The whispers from the garden had unsettled them both, leaving an air of tension as they approached their next location, a hidden study rumored to be the personal sanctuary of Reginald Sterling, an 18th-century ancestor known for his eccentricities and secretive nature. Located in a forgotten wing of the mansion, the study was concealed behind a false wall in what appeared to be an ordinary linen closet. After carefully sliding the wall aside, Eleanor and Cartwell entered the dimly lit room. It was a time capsule of sorts, filled with nautical maps, astrolabes, and strange mechanical devices, reflecting Reginald's obsession with exploration and astrology. Among the artifacts, a large globe caught their attention. It was exquisitely detailed, with tiny gemstones marking specific coordinates. Eleanor noticed that some of these gemstones corresponded with the locations marked on the Sterling family map. They realized that this globe was not only a map, but a puzzle. Each gemstone could be pressed, perhaps unlocking something hidden. Working together, they pressed the stones in the sequence derived from the coded messages in Howard's journal. After a moment of silence, a compartment within the globe's base clicked open, revealing another key, this one more ornate than the last, and a letter sealed with the Sterling crest. Eleanor carefully opened the letter, which was written by Reginald himself, addressing his descendants. The letter spoke of a final test, a culmination of all the clues leading to the heart of the Sterling spirit. It warned of greed and betrayal, urging those who reached this point to consider what they sought from the Sterling fortune. Eleanor felt a chill as she read the letter aloud to Cartwell, the weight of her ancestors' words pressing down on her. Renewed by this discovery, they examined the map and identified the likely location of this final test, the estate's old boathouse, which sat on the edge of a large fog-covered lake. The boathouse had been out of use for years, its doors warped, its windows boarded up. The journey to the boathouse was quiet, both Eleanor and Cartwell lost in their own thoughts about the implications of Reginald's letter. When they arrived, the fog was so thick it seemed like the world beyond the lake had disappeared entirely. Inside the boathouse they found an old wooden chest, heavy and bound with iron. The key from the globe fit perfectly into the lock, and with a turn, the lid creaked open. Instead of gold or gems, they found an array of personal items, photographs, letters, a dried rose, and a small leather-bound diary belonging to Reginald. Eleanor leafed through the diary, finding it filled with reflections on his life, his regrets, and his hopes for his family's redemption. It was clear that the real treasure of the Sterlings wasn't material wealth, but the legacy of their experiences and the lessons learned from a life of complexity and moral ambiguity. As they absorbed the contents of the chest, the atmosphere in the boathouse shifted. The fog began to lift, and the lake reflected the breaking dawn, shimmering with the light of the rising sun. It was then that Eleanor and Cartwell heard footsteps outside. They exchanged a look, prepared for a confrontation, but instead, they were greeted by the faces of the other treasure hunters and locals who had been drawn to the estate by the lure of gold. Faced with the crowd, Eleanor made a decision. She shared the story of their discoveries, showing them the diary and the personal items. She spoke of the true legacy of the Sterlings, emphasizing the value of history and memory over mere wealth. To her surprise, the crowd listened, moved by the story. The atmosphere of greed and competition dissipated, replaced by a shared sense of wonder and reflection. As the day grew brighter, Eleanor and Cartwell agreed to continue exploring the Sterling legacy together, not as rivals, but as collaborators in uncovering and preserving the history of Whistleridge and the Sterling family. Their journey had brought them not only closer to the past, but also to understanding the importance of what we leave behind for future generations. As the morning light bathed the boathouse in a golden glow, the group that had gathered began to disperse, each person touched by the Sterling family's history and the pursuit that had led them not to treasure, but to a deeper understanding of legacy and value. Eleanor and Dr. Cartwell, now partners in truth rather than rivals in greed, decided to spend the remaining days at the mansion to organize and preserve what they had discovered. In the following weeks, they transformed the estate into a site of historical significance. Eleanor, with her background in history, took the lead in cataloging the artifacts and documents, ensuring that everything was meticulously recorded and preserved. Cartwell, with his experience in archival restoration, assisted in restoring many of the older, more delicate items. Together, they curated an exhibition in the mansion's main hall, inviting historians, locals, and descendants of the Sterling family to view the collection. The exhibition was not just a showcase of the artifacts they had found, but also a narrative journey through the Sterling family's history, from their rise to prominence to their moral and ethical challenges and contributions to the local community. As visitors walked through the exhibition, they were greeted by panels describing the voyages, trades, and personal stories of the Sterlings, highlighted by the artifacts and documents that Eleanor and Cartwell had discovered. The diary of Reginald Sterling became a central piece, displayed under glass, with excerpts showing his reflections and regrets. The response to the exhibition was overwhelmingly positive. People were fascinated by the depth of the family's history and impressed by the thoughtful presentation of their complex legacy. The local historical society, recognizing the significance of the find and the work done by Eleanor and Cartwell, proposed to establish a permanent museum in the mansion, dedicated to the Sterling family and the history of Whistleridge. Eleanor was appointed as the museum's first curator, a role she accepted with pride and a sense of duty. She felt a deep connection to her ancestors and a responsibility to present their history with honesty and integrity. Meanwhile, Cartwell continued to assist in the museum's development, but his curiosity and scholarly instincts drove him to further investigate the Sterling's international connections. He embarked on travels to follow the routes the Sterlings had once taken, planning to collect additional information and artifacts that would enhance the museum's collections and provide a broader context for the Sterling family's activities. One evening, as the museum was about to close, Eleanor found herself alone in the main hall, surrounded by the artifacts that now told the story of her family. The late sunlight filtered through the windows, casting long shadows and bathing the room in a warm, amber light. She walked slowly among the displays, her eyes lingering on the photograph of Reginald Sterling, a man she had come to know well through his diary. As she stood there, a gentle breeze fluttered through the open window, carrying with it the faintest whisper, like a voice from the past, assuring her that this was just the beginning of her journey into her family's history. Eleanor felt a profound sense of peace and purpose. She was no longer just a descendant of the Sterling family. She was a keeper of their legacy, tasked with ensuring their stories were told and remembered not for their wealth, but for their humanity and the lessons they imparted. As the sun set on Whistleridge, the mansion, now a museum, stood as a testament to the enduring nature of history and the unbreakable bonds of family. Eleanor looked forward to the days ahead, knowing that each visitor who walked through these doors would leave with a piece of the Sterling spirit, carried forward into the world beyond. Months passed, and the Sterling Family Museum had become a cornerstone of Whistleridge's cultural and historical landscape. Eleanor had grown into her role as curator, finding joy and fulfillment in bringing her ancestors' stories to life for others. Under her guidance, the museum expanded its exhibits, including interactive sections that allowed visitors to engage directly with the history of the Sterlings and the broader context of their era. One crisp autumn morning, as Eleanor prepared for a special exhibition dedicated to maritime history and the Sterling family's role in it, she received a surprising letter. It was from Dr. James Cartwell, posted from a distant port city in Europe. He wrote of his discoveries, which included original Sterling shipping logs and a set of old navigational instruments that had belonged to a Sterling ship captain. His excitement was palpable, and he hinted at returning soon with these items to add to the museum's collection. Eleanor felt a surge of anticipation and pride. Cartwell's findings would not only enrich the museum's displays, but also deepen the narrative of the Sterling family's global influence. She responded immediately, expressing her eagerness to integrate these new artifacts into the upcoming exhibitions. As the day of the new exhibition approached, the museum buzzed with activity. Artifacts were carefully positioned, descriptions were meticulously proofread, and everything was polished to a shine. The town of Whistleridge, too, seemed to buzz with a renewed sense of pride in their local history. On the evening of the exhibition opening, residents and guests from afar gathered in the museum's grand hall, which Eleanor and her team had transformed into a vivid tableau of maritime history. Models of Sterling ships, detailed maps of their routes, and displays of exotic goods traded across the seas told a compelling story of adventure, risk, and enterprise. Dr. Cartwell returned just in time for the opening, bringing with him the promised artifacts. His arrival brought an additional wave of excitement to the event, and his artifacts became the centerpiece of the night. Together, he and Eleanor unveiled the new items to an enthusiastic crowd, their shared efforts highlighting a successful partnership that had grown from initial mistrust to deep collaborative respect. As the guests explored the exhibits, Eleanor and Cartwell took a moment to step aside, looking over the crowded room filled with intrigued faces and lively discussions. "You've done something remarkable here, Eleanor," Cartwell said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "You've turned a personal quest into a public treasure." Eleanor smiled, her eyes reflecting the soft lights of the exhibition. "We did this together, James, and there's still so much more to discover." The night drew on, and as the last guest departed, Eleanor stood at the entrance of the museum, looking out over the estate. The moon cast a gentle glow over the grounds, turning the gardens and paths into silver threads weaving through the landscape. She thought about the whispering voices and the spectral guardians of the Sterling legacy. It seemed they had found peace, knowing that their stories would live on, respected and remembered not just for their wealth, but for their human experiences and contributions to the world. Closing the doors, Eleanor felt a profound connection to the past and a hopeful gaze towards the future. The museum was not just a repository of artifacts. It was a living, breathing space where the past met the present, where lessons were learned, and where the legacy of the Sterling family continued to inspire. As she turned off the lights, the echoes of the day settled around her, whispering of the ongoing journey, the stories yet to be told, and the endless possibilities that lay within both history and the human heart. With a contented sigh, she walked back through the museum, her footsteps silent among the shadows, ready to start anew in the morning, continuing her role as a guardian of history and a bridge to the future. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more stories like this, hit that like button and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And let me know on which topic you would like to see stories next. And check out these other stories you might enjoy. See you in the next one. Till then, take care and goodbye.